One of the things that one of the things that I always go to with where a lot of people on the other side of the aisle really have this thing where Democrats can't be Christians, or Democrats can't be patriotic, or Democrats some kind of way are of the devil. And it's like I always say that they aren't pro life, they're pro fetus.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
what do you think about that?
I mean, it goes back to that issue of conformity. First of all, the notion that evangelicals are, I don't know how to say it, truer or better Christians. I don't know what it is, but I know a lot of Baptists, like Protestant, God fearing, Black Americans who look at evangelicals and are confused about how they could even align themselves with any of the teachings of Christ and call themselves Christians. Because in a lot of the things that they do are not Christ-like, I guess I would say, you know, including things like, supporting people in need, including things like supporting a president who wants to grab them by the what. Um, so I don't see how it is possible that on the other end you have certain evangelical Christians who ignore the conservative Christian left, because there are a lot of Democrats who are staunch Christians, who are Christian in general. The Republican Party could have actually won over a lot of those voters if they weren't so racial in their messaging, you know. But the idea of Republicans as more patriotic or more Christian, I think is absolutely incorrect. But they like to claim, that they like to present themselves as if they're more American, more patriotic, more this than people in the left, and it's just not true, because again, large segments of the left are Christians. We're all patriots. We all believe in democracy. I think believing in democracy is highly patriotic. I don't think I've ever felt so American and proud to be an American since Trump got elected. I don't know, for some reason it sort of reaffirmed. It's like they deny us that right to be an American in a certain sense. And even though I was born in this country, even though my ancestors, back and back generations back, my ancestors were slaves. My ancestors built this country, but they want to make us seem like, we're the terrible stepkid. And in some ways, I guess we are. But
I think there's large portions of their electorate that see what Mitch McConnell is doing, see what Donald Trump did, see what Bill Barr was doing, see what Michael Flynn did, and I think they don't care. Like I think that because Mitch McConnell can block something that is good for them. Like right now, I just did a segment on West Virginia, how the bridges and stuff like that are cracked and are damaged, but yet even if it's for them, they don't care. Like, or do they care? Please, somebody out there, let me know. Because how can you allow Mitch McConnell to get away with stuff like that, or Donald Trump?
it's a very strange thing. It's a very strange thing, because a lot of these Republicans, it's like, like hating Democrats is like cutting off your nose to spite your face. Like a lot of a lot of Republicans are actually working class folks who would benefit from a lot of the um policy positions, a lot of the legislation that the Democrats try to put forward and that are being blocked. But one of the things I do wonder about is that message getting across? Because again, Democrats don't yell from the mountaintops, hey, look at these nutso people and what they're trying to do. And when you don't explicitly say that to people, a lot can be missed, especially when there's a whole, when you have things like social media, when you have things like Fox News. People did the way, I mean, what's the documentary on Netflix that talks about social media and how it sort of takes you down that rabbit hole, and how it's pretty much feeding you the thing. It's not feeding you news in general, it's feeding you the thing that they think is going to keep you watching. And sometimes that thing could be a very one, it can be one issue. And so if you're only getting your news from social media and you have a right wing view, and you're only getting fed right wing views, you have no idea about what the opposition is thinking, what Democrats are thinking, then it's easy for you to not all the way see what's going on. I mean, look at Fox News, is dedicated literally to lies and deceit.
I
They
want
get away with it because some of their viewers only watch Fox News.
I want to have viewers recognize the fact that Amy Coney Barrett, when she was picked to be the Supreme Court nominee, the Christian evangelical right were the ones who were pushing for her nomination based on uh, abortion.
Correct.
I mean, they went all out for her.
Correct.
And it didn't faze them at all that Donald Trump was the one that was appointing her. You know, there's so many things that we can point to. I mean, we don't have time in this segment, but there's so many things that just was not uh, Christian, if you will.
You know, this was like a decade ago, right? I'm at this bar and I wind up getting into like this heated political debate with this white guy. And one of the points that he tried to make is that, listen, Democrats are emotional voters. They're not voting based on their wallets. They're voting because they believe somehow that, that uh, the government is going to pay for everything. Like, in other words, we're not as responsible money wise as the Republican Party. And I had to turn to him and I had to say, all people are emotional voters, all people. And Republicans are also in their, they believe themselves to be fiscally responsible people who, they're supporting the Republican Party because the Republican Party is the party who is about money and growing the economy and things like that, even though sometimes they're not always giving away free stuff. I mean, that's the small government, things like that. This is the thing that they're implanting in the heads of their voters. Republicanism has branded itself as the party of smarter people, people who are more responsible, people who are more mature, when they're absolutely none of those things. This is the party who supports corporations who are going to steal wealth. You want to talk about wealth redistribution? What about when large corporations, don't pay their fair share of taxes, and we're left with scraps, and we're having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to barely make it by. I mean, and then when the economy busts and then those assets get taken by a wealthier person, that's wealth redistribution. Not somebody who, is in need of social services, who's in need of welfare, quote unquote, and who has paid their taxes and paid to get those benefits.
Really quick, I just want to, this will be the last thing. I just want to point out that um, taxes is, everybody, and that's what's so weird about some of the thinking in the Republican Party. They always want to talk about socialism. When this whole policy money issue thing is based on socialism. Why? Because we all pay taxes and it goes into a pool, and they use that pool to do government services for the people. And when there's a Democratic president, it leans left. When there's a Republican president, it leans right. And they get all caught up in socialism when think they should think that this is, when you say the word socialism, it just everybody on the right goes crazy. But nobody has the intellectual ability to understand that the tax system that we pay to the government and to the states and to the county is all a big pool, and it's a distribution of wealth depending on who is in office.
Correct, correct. I mean, I think it's also crazy that they're sitting there, up in arms about socialism, but yet a communist dictator. I mean, I know Russia isn't supposedly a communist country anymore, but certainly they still, Putin still holds those views.
Right, right.
And you outcry about socialism, but yet you're okay with this, with the president buddying up with this communist. Taxes, I mean, it's just, I don't understand the people don't get the basic concept. I actually agree that taxes should remain at a, shouldn't go up but so high. Taxes don't need to be astronomical.
That's
In the
right.
United States, though, compared to other countries, we pay one of the lowest tax rates. There are countries paying, 40, 50, 60% in taxes.
Isn't
That's
it
freaking wealth redistribution.
isn't it weird, like the state of New York, that is a blue state, has some of the highest taxes, but yet we're Democrats. The whole state mostly is Democrats. Now you got a state, a red state, who hardly, I'm not saying hardly pays, everybody pays their taxes, but the taxes aren't nowhere near as high as New York. And they're complaining, talking about, tax hikes. There's a whole debate in their state about tax hikes when tax hikes don't even, to compare to New York, it doesn't even compare to New York.
We have to pay, we have to contribute something in order to, as a society, to have certain services provided to us. It's just the way it goes. I mean, if you don't pay your taxes, like, who's gonna, how do you pay for police, the fire department, your local school? These are things that, as a society, it dictates the quality of life. I'm sorry, but government has its role, and it's important. You know, I don't believe that government should control everything, especially things like a woman's right to choose, for example. But government definitely is important, and can play an important role. But it's a quality of life issue. You pay into, you make your contribution so that we're all okay. We're a society. I mean, it's really not that complicated.